I've got two wonderful guests. Neither one of them you've seen before. I saved them for Friday, the final day of the week, the business week, let's say. I'm actually going to start taking weekends off starting tomorrow and see how that works out. Uh, chat is wide open. We depend on chat to make us as relevant and provide as many quality takeaways that justifies your time, thought, and effort today. With that, I want to introduce you to Julian Roberts. I think you already know Julian because wherever I go on LinkedIn, he's either speaking or showing up. And, he has accomplished that top of mind awareness. And I think that's another benefit is when someone sees you here, they think you could benefit them there. And pretty soon you get syndicated without even knowing it. With that, I want to also introduce you to Mike Verret. And he has a fascinating background and interesting direction that he's on. And, I think what the benefit of this show also has demonstrated is just the thought-provoking conversation that you get without having a script, without knowing what anybody's going to say next. And it really does draw things out that, you wouldn't have thought. Well, we've got our first comment, Dave Snell, who does every other Wednesday. He's got his show. He's in the collaboration group. Wonderful gentleman, 26 years in the Navy. And now he's helping other veterans transition to civilian life. And he's also a cybersecurity expert. So thank you so much, Dave. With that, Julian, why don't you share a little bit about yourself? First thoughts on resilience. And so excited to have you.
Well, thank you, Don, and good to be collaborating with you, Mike, as well. Yeah, so just a quick intro of myself. For those who don't know me, I'm an executive business coach, and I have a passion for resilience, a passion for helping people, individuals and teams. I work on two aspects. I work on your mindset, helping you unblock those things that get in the way, which is usually you, or those limiting beliefs that get in our way as well, which we're not always aware of. So I help you with that. But I also work on developing strategies for SMEs, strategies for growth as well. I've got a background in strategy and sales, so I bring that with me. And what's underpinning all of this is that I've got this passion and deep sort of understanding of resilience, and I bring that to the individuals, but also from a team and organizational point of view. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's a lot about you in a little bit of time. So very much appreciated. I want to swing it over to Mike, allow Mike to share a little bit about himself and what his initial thoughts on resilience is.
Sure. My background was years on the agency side until I managed to, on the ad agency side, before I managed to get myself hired by my client, Hasbro Toys. And it was a weird experience for me coming from this place where only 5% of what the business does mattered to us as the agency. Make the toys relevant to the kid, make them want to buy them, and make sure mom knows too, right? But what I really saw was what 100% of a business looks like. And it takes 2 years for an action figure to get to market from concept. It's an unbelievably complex process for a big company. I didn't know what was going on. It was all MBAs who would just, do whatever they had to get up the corporate ladder. So I felt really out of place, but I really saw what 100% of the business means. You need an ad agency. You can't figure it out internally on your own. And when I left there, I spent 3 years, now in the fourth, focused only on what an audience sees and how it relates to how a business sees the world. It's very, very different. So now my job is to help businesses answer a simple question: what do you do? And answering that question the right way leads to more questions and leads to the right kind of pitch you want to have for your business. The term resilience, I did think about this, and I guess I cheated, Don, because I thought a little bit ahead about it. But I equate that with the existential would be, how do you come up from the bottom of the barrel? But I think every day we experience resilience in our life and certainly in our business. But it's a question of, do you learn? Right? Do you have the passion to come back, and do you learn from the past to make sure that you can take 2 steps forward anytime you take 1 step back? I think that's a true test of resilience in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent start to a great word, resilience. You know, it's easier looking back and seeing what resilience really was and meant in your life, as opposed to looking forward if you've never encountered it. You know, I think it's totally, or a lot totally, mindset, attitude, judgment. Because if you look at everything as a continuum and not an outcome, if you look at everything as being playing through something instead of stuck at something or being repelled by something, you know, it's a one step, one day at a time. You know, no one really gets a choice on the cards they're dealt. They only get a choice on how they want to play them. And, you know, I think the really, really resilient people are the people that, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. They get stronger, they get healthier to meet the challenge. And some people get overcome by it because there's some decisions or events in life, there is no middle ground, right? It's left or right, now or never. And I think once you can be your best friend, you know, and not lose twice, right? You took a hit and now you're going to stress yourself out thinking about what you can't change. And I think that's important. But before we swing it back, let's identify. We have Dave here. Carl's here. I'm so proud of Carl. He joined the group. We launched this collaboration group like 8 weeks ago. He's a finance gentleman, 40 years or so experience in Colorado, doing a lot of crowdfunding, things of that nature. And just started his newsletter a couple weeks ago. He's over 500. The other day already got a lead out of it. And what it lent itself to is people surfaced out of the past who forgot about Carl, right? And he's doing a daily newsletter. So if you keep showing up every day, it's like, wow, you kind of unearth what you already planted. And not only that, but Carl's going to be launching his own show in the next week or two. And we were working on the branding and the name of it. You know, it's like if you ever saw that old show was Pimp My Ride, you know, where people would come in with these crummy cars and were all banged up. And before you know it, they ripped everything out but maybe some lug nuts and replaced it with all the good stuff. And I think that's what people have the opportunity to do is really recondition and actually optimize what they're doing with the benefit of people already doing it, right? And today on LinkedIn, you get same day results. Julian's here, a different way of spelling Julian. Thank you for coming. Carl comes back and says, are you now doing subtle sponsorship advertising with logo on the shirt? No, my son's a general manager out at Johns Hopkins, so I get all the Blue Jays stuff. So you always see Jays and Blue Jays just to support them. So Julian, fascinating topic, and it was your choice. So I'm glad we hung in there and made it happen. So where do we go from here, Julian?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm with Mike in terms of definition. I think often resilience has been this sort of understanding of just being grit and just pushing through and being determined. And there's an element of that, but that unfortunately can become a bit toxic if that's what it's all about. And I think that the key thing for me, which I think Mike said it, is this learning loop. You know, when you get knocked down or when something gets in the way or you overcome something, is what did you learn, whether you overcome it or not? What did you learn in that process? And I think for me, that's what resilience is all about. It's about getting back up, or before you get back up, you know, what's the learning, what's the reflection, what can I do differently next time? How can I navigate it differently next time? Whether from an individual point of view or from a team point of view, you know, and often, you know, businesses run so fast, don't they? And they don't stop to debrief, to understand why we didn't, you know, launch that product in the way we should have launched it, or we didn't get the revenue expected, or the sales, or whatever it may be. You know, do some stopping, reflecting, and debriefing, and learning, and then take those learnings and put it back into place for next time. And I think that to me is the fundamental. And I do that a lot with my clients. I get them to really reflect on scenarios they've been through and whether they were successful or not. You know, what was the learning? And usually the learning, as we know, comes when you don't overcome things or something more difficult, because you have to really be creative, innovative. And so that for me is the crux of it, is what are you learning and getting back up again rather than just grit, determination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Mike, how do you add to that?
Well, I think a big part of, I agree, I'm 100% on board that the idea of resilience, I think people are more open-minded about what it means now, right? But yes, that idea of grit, just, only the strong survive, I'm going to come back from this. But I think the challenge for a business really becomes, especially a small to medium business, right? That's who we both work with, Julian. The owner, the CEO, isn't just the CEO, they're the C-suite. They have to have every responsibility. They don't have a finance guy, a marketing guy necessarily, So a lot of that is they learn, but they're learning within a vacuum. And sometimes they know everything, they've learned a few things, but how it all ties together is still remarkably challenging when one day you're worried about finance, the next marketing, the next sales, the next whatever have you. We have to shift gears so much in our minds that coming back from one thing almost gets swallowed up by coming back from another thing in another vertical. So I think for a lot of businesses, resilience is based on learning, but managing that learning the right way. And Don, I think you and I talked about this when we had a discussion last week, but this idea that if we can focus what we're doing to a simple way to think about it, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to manage, right? But if we are thinking about everything at the same time and we're only fixing certain things, we're missing the bigger problem that's sort of holding us down from that comeback and only the strong survive. And one of the biggest challenges is vision versus reality. You have a vision for where you want your business to go. Well, that starts to benchmark what resilience is going to mean to you. And the first thing you experience is erratic behavior, right? I mean, if it's crystal clear where you want to go before you start going. And I use the example of a highway in a desert where you could see for 10 miles. But the second you start that trip, it becomes a winding road on a snowy mountain pass at night. I mean, you are doing everything wrong or failing or this or that and trying to figure out how to cobble it together. And what we really need to maintain that comeback, right? To truly be resilient, we need to be able to manage things, understand them. I explained that it's not a straight line. It's stepping stones that create this parabolic effect up to your vision. And managing that along the way and coming back from smaller things versus everything increases the chances of being successful in your resilience.
Great insights. Whenever we talk about a word, and we talk about a word every day here, there's relativity, conditionality, how it's applied. When you look at resilience, again, to Julian's point, not everything has an element of being resilient. It doesn't have to be a major life crisis, right? It's just how do you work through the little things and stay resilient? How do you practice resiliency? Because every great trait or attribute needs to be practiced. And here's another thing, is when you're facing it continuously. I mean, a fireman is always facing a challenge, or a first responder, or someone in the armed forces. Over time, it becomes more of a normalcy or a necessity to be resilient in situations like that. So as a CEO, because that's what my earlier life was for 37 years, founding my own businesses, I was faced with decisions every hour. Launch or don't launch, go or don't go. There wasn't time to think. There wasn't time to discuss. It's like, they're on the phone. You want to buy it or don't you? Here's the deal. And a lot of times, you work on averages like everybody else. You say, okay, I'll do 10 deals, 2 will be home runs, 5 will take care of themselves, and 3 or 4 will be flops. And that's how, when you calculate it or identify it, you said, well, hey, that's not a bad batting average. The people who are looking just to win are limiting themselves, because even coming in a close second is a good thing, because there's another race coming up. And when people see how you run, people see how you finish strong, even though you can't finish to win. you'll get another opportunity. So you got to do everything you can to do everything you can in the way that people will respect it over time. People forget about the details once they get that relationship going, once they get that trust, and I think that's the most important thing, is not how well you do in battle, how well do you go back into battle, right? One battle you lose, another battle you play, and it just happens like that. Julian, sounds like we're really moving forward on your word today.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. You talk about, sort of going for 10 sort of pitches and everything else, outcomes. I think what we've got to realize is we're not in control of the outcomes. I think where people go wrong is when they think they can control an outcome. You can control the process to a certain extent. And I think that's the important thing is the process piece is what we've got to get involved in, the next steps you can do, what you're in control of, how you go about things. I have sort of three sort of core pillars to building resilience, and that's one is purpose, one is daily habits, and the other is as community. And I think as individuals, as much as we get faced with things, I think you've got to put yourself in a place of strength and a sense of building a strong sort of core or framework. If you're running a marathon, yes, you do the long runs, the short runs, all the different types of training, but you've also got to work on your core strength, because that's really important. Those exercises that for your core and Pilates, that type of stuff, and that's often where people forget, because that's almost like the engine room that will keep you going. And I work with a lot of clients and talk about, when you are faced with those difficult things, how do you cope in that moment? What's going on, and building that through real sort of daily habits, and some key habits we can talk about is things like doing gratitude. I mean, people talk a lot about gratitude, and it sounds very sort of woo-woo stuff, but there's some real medical scientific evidence that when you are grateful, when you start being grateful for things and start verbalizing it, whether you write it down or speak it out, your body produces serotonin and dopamine, and there's these chemical things in your body create this sort of positive view. So if you start the day being grateful for what you've got, whatever it may be, small, large, doesn't matter what it is, you will activate a physiological response in your body to be more positive, and you'll start to see things more positive. You'll start to see those silver linings when you get those challenges. Instead of seeing the problem, the difficulties, you'll start to say, okay, what are the opportunities here? What are the ways around it? What are the ways I can build upon this? And you start to see things differently. So that's one of the ways of building a sort of a framework, an ongoing thing. Another one is to reflect. We talk about learning. You only learn if you reflect on something, and you allow your brain and your system to process stuff. And I think we don't do enough of that. We run 100 miles an hour in life. Take some time out, go for a walk, whatever way you reflect, just to sort of process your life. I go for a walk in the woods, and that's where I process my life, and I get my learnings, and I embed things, and I get creative, and I get my understandings of who I am and what I'm doing. And then the other one is mindfulness, because when you get into a state of, whether it's a CEO, Mike was talking about, where the state of sort of being frantic, what's going on, what decision do I make? And we kick into our sort of fight or flight sort of brain, doesn't it? And starts to go, I want to run away from this, I want to fight it, adrenaline starts running. If we do things like mindfulness, and again, it sounds very woo-woo stuff, but again, this is medical stuff here. When you're mindful, whether that's through yoga, journaling, whatever you get, I go in an ice bath every day, things like that. That's quite mindful, especially when it's like about 0 degrees. You connect more to your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, which is all about logic. It's all about reason. It calms you down a little bit more, and therefore, it's just preparing your body in a way that when you get faced with issues, challenges, you don't sort of fly off and go into emotion and start doing very bad decisions, usually when it's ruled by emotion. And so for me, it's creating that resilient mindset, that resilient framework, that core that enables you to overcome things, because we don't know what's going to happen. Uncertainty, you can lose a customer or a client tomorrow, a project could fail, who knows? Stuff can happen in our personal life. We don't know what's going to happen. It's not being doomsday. It's just the fact that's how life is. It just unfolds. And we need to put ourselves in the best place when it does happen, that we can deal with it and cope with it from a psychological point of view as well. And so moving forward and then using strategies to help navigate that as well.
Wow, that's pretty comprehensive and wonderful insights. Truly something people could take with them today and apply right after the show if they chose to. And you're right, it's all relative. Uh, and to your point, everybody knows what, no one gets out of here alive, right? So it's a matter of what do you do when you can do what you can do. And having I wake up, I'm grateful for another ticket on the roller coaster of life, right? Because no one's guaranteed tomorrow. And, it's the little things that can mean a lot, that the bigger things are part of one step at a time. Who put the time frame on it? Who put the urgency? Who put the all or nothing? And I think you're so right, Julian, is that plan, do, review is important. And people are so busy doing, they can't review and they can't plan. They just get dragged along, and wherever it goes, they end up. So, Mike.
I loved everything you just talked about. And I think there's a lot of internal peace of mind that needs to happen, right, to achieve resiliency. But you said a few things that I talk about as well. That idea you mentioned, the fight or flight, right? We are the only living organism that has ego, free will, right? To put it in parlance, we've all seen a dog poop in the park. Can you imagine a human doing that? It would elicit a completely different reaction. My dog looks at me when I bring him to the park, and it freaked me out. So I looked it up. Simple pack behavior, making sure I've got his back when he's in his most vulnerable position, right? We don't operate fight or flight. We had, at some point in our development, we got to the point where it's, wait, should I fight or should I run? What are the consequences of each? Free will and ego are born, right? So now let's apply that to what sort of impediments to resolution are. One of them is the simple idea of what if, right? It could be anticipatory dread. Think of it in a presentation. What if I don't say the words right? What if my tie is wrong? These things that have very little chance of actually happening occupy our mind 100%. And it sets us down the wrong attitude, right? The wrong trajectory for where we want to go. When all of those things flipped could be, what if I get everything right? What if they love my tie? What if everyone asks for a copy of my presentation afterwards? Those things aren't 100% likely, but they're much more likely than the other stuff, right? So that what if, what's going to happen? Well, I did it wrong last time. If I try this and it's wrong, that's going to be terrible for me. We get very much in our own heads that way. And it's simply because we're human beings. And I think community is another one, right? People going through the same thing, or even fans of the same thing, creates tribalism. And what you've got in that dynamic is you've got different inputs from different people on how to manage yourself, right? You could have one very type A, I don't care, just get it done, I need to win, right? You used the term I need it done earlier, I need to win. Well, that sets a precedent for I have to win everything. And every little battle counts huge because they're on this trajectory of I have to win, right? But learning from them along the way, combined with someone who's more introverted, someone who's more analytical, someone who's more can't we all just get along, allows us to come back, allows us to build that. I say build resiliency, but you need the support of others when it's going on. So you need that idea of what's going to happen is going to happen, right? The universe moves. It's our job to sort of roll with the process. And not being afraid of what's going to happen simply because of something in your mind that you're building up and no one else is aware of. I think those are self-limiting factors, and the solutions are just to look forward and find your tribe.
Well, and everything's relevant. And based on that, if you're doing what you're passionate about, if you're doing what you can't wake up in the morning soon enough to get to, learning is worthwhile. Participating with people in that area is worthwhile, like you say, with community.
Well, there's a desire to at that point as well. Yeah.
Exactly. And once you get good enough, and if you're exposed to enough, you'll get rewarded. So I'm always, you're learning until you're earning. You're not losing until you're winning. You're not losing until you're earning, because then the earning becomes the way to get rid of the feelings of being behind and losing. And, sometimes you get knocked off a horse and you thank the person who knocked you off a couple years later, right? Because when you got up, you decide to jump on a different horse, go a different way. And if it wasn't for that, and if you believe that there's a better tomorrow, every time I ever made a business plan, I always in my own mind said, well, I know I'm going to meet people I've yet to know this year and learn things I've yet to learn yet. And when that comes into play, this business plan will be a lot stronger. And, it's really about liking yourself, enjoying yourself. When you're by yourself, you're happy. The other thing is that I read and heard from a lot of interesting people is that you ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen, right? You go to that level. Well, if I don't get tickets to the Rolling Stones this month, maybe I'll get them another time, or maybe I'll get a different group. But you always go down to the lowest common denominator and you say, can I live with this? The other thing I'd like to add is the why are you doing what you're doing? And that's when I adopted minimalism, when I found out the more stuff I had, the more stuff had me. The more time I was spending on something that I wasn't passionate about, and I wasn't really caring to trade time, and my mindset would change. If you're out there shoveling snow for an hour, you're not as creative as if you were walking in a park, or a forest like Julian. So before I swing it over, let me get the comments in. And what's so fascinating about today's crowd? They're all people who have live streams. They're all people who are in my collaboration group. And that's what you want. You want to distill down, if you had a board meeting, 6, 7, 8 is plenty. If 40 raving fans showed up and start talking, you get diluted, right? So you really got to get expanded and then compressed. So identifying a strong purpose, why, meaning for doing the hard things for which we set a plan. Your marathon example, and Dave could hardly walk a block and now he's doing marathons, will help build the resilience when things get tough and make us want to quit. So true. Beverly does every Tuesday. Her focus is women's empowerment over 50. Morning, guys. Glad to be here. Beverly's up in Montreal, therapist, coach, does her podcast. I mean, she's just knocking it out of the park. Carrie's here. Carrie's a jokester. I haven't seen you in a while, Carrie. Beverly comes back. Yes, Don, that's great strategy. The worst usually never happens and always goes back to the why. And just before I swing it to Julian, 90% of what you worry about never happens. The 10% that does happen, you had no way of planning for it. And one person who is really smart says, how do you plan for the worst? There is no plan. If you get hit by 2 buses, do you need a plan? So getting back to Julian, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting talking about, I think Mike was saying about almost the what ifs, and that can be deemed as a negative, but I've reframed it, and it's almost, I help clients use that as from a visualization point of view. If you take a lot of Olympians, like Michael Phelps, and I think he got, gold medal in whatever, Beijing Olympics, and he got he got a world record in, I can't remember what stroke he was swimming, but he got a world record and he got the gold. But people don't realize that halfway through that race, he lost his goggles, filled up with water. He couldn't see where he was going, but nobody noticed that at all. And this is for me because the power of visualization. Because not only does he visualize a perfect race, going smoothly, dives in, swims perfectly, overtakes his competitors, all that sort of stuff, and wins. He also would visualize potential things that could go wrong. And it's not being negative, it's just preparing yourself and using the power of visualization. So he would visualize his goggles filling with water, his goggles coming off, his swimsuit tearing, various scenarios. And then he would think about, okay, what would I do if that happens? And he would then visualize the mitigating strategy to overcome that. And so when you're in the flow of that and that happens, because if you do visualization properly, then your body's already gone through it, it's already done it. And therefore, A, you won't get so thrown because you think, oh, okay, I've done this before. And then B, you'll have a strategy straight away that you can put in place. And I do this with clients, particularly like if they're going to sort of publicly speak for the first time or start doing more speaking publicly. Think about the things that could go wrong. And it sounds quite negative, but it's not. And then I say, visualize it, literally visualize it. And then they start to come up with ideas. I did it with a team of ladies. I was coaching them to row around Great Britain. So they were doing a massive 2,000-mile row. And I got them to think about when they were sort of putting out an anchor, a certain type of anchor, and they all visualized as a team what could go wrong. And then they all sort of shared that, and that became a real learning opportunity. Someone said, I never thought about that, and I didn't realize that could happen. Okay, what would you do now if that happens? And then they were all armed with the strategies, if that ever happened, to get on and do it without any fuss, without any stress, because we've already visualized it, we've already understood it. And I think sometimes that can be really helpful. And you can do that obviously on every day-to-day things, but certainly for big things, visualization is quite powerful. So using what ifs can be quite helpful. And I do this with a lot of businesses as well. I'll almost do scenario planning. We call it scenario planning. What if your sales drop by 10%, 20%, or your CEO can't work, all these various scenarios. And then you come up with strategies. And so it's just preparing you. And it means you get ready to get on with it without any stress. It doesn't mean you're going to think of everything. That's fine. But what it does do, if you do this with a team, when other things happen, you very quickly knuckle down, work out a strategy and get on it because you've created a process. And I think that's the important thing with this, is creating processes that get speed and get you moving on, because shit happens, doesn't it? Fact of life is you're not in control of it, and we try our best to mitigate it. But yeah, that's how I approach the what ifs. I think it's good to use the what ifs.
Well, I think one point that you bring up is when you're talking about team, who's on your team, right? It's easier to be resilient when everybody in your family and all your friends are rooting you on or telling you, hey, don't worry about it, because to Mike's point, ego does come into play. Some people's fear of loss is not that they can't take the loss, but they can't go home and tell people the loss that just happened, right? You can't say, I hate my boss, I hate my job, it's killing me, I quit. And someone says, well, who's going to make the mortgage payment? And then what are you going to do in the meantime? So, there's conflict not within yourself sometimes. If you have it within yourself and the game is between you and yourself, can you afford to fight two battles on two different fronts? And I think that's where you get provisioned. You say, okay, if I'm going to climb this mountain, I better have the right equipment, have the right crew or team with me. And then you go to a point where you hit the go button, or you say it takes more time. And I think that's where you need to continue to work towards honest communication with the people you have around you and have them have some buy-in. Nobody likes to know after the fact. I just went out and bought a new puppy. Well, couldn't you ask me? Or I just bought all this carpet and I didn't share the color scheme with you. So anyways, with that, Julian, no, I guess it's Mike. Mike, let's go to you. I want to be fair.
It's funny. The thing that it immediately conjures up for me, Julian, is a scene in Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., where he's in a fighting arena, and he pictures everything before he actually engages the guy. It happens in slow motion, and he talks through it, right? And that's the right application of the term "what if." It's fear versus preparation. Fear is going to be stifling. It's going to stop you, right? It can just be the biggest detriment to what you want to accomplish because you're afraid to take that step. Preparation means you're ready for what comes up. And I agree, you can't, there's no 100% solution or preparation, but there's 95% risk mitigation, which helps a lot. But across all of this, how I tie it all together in my mind, I tend to think in simplified, lowest common denominator terms, right? What we all see, what we all understand. And it comes down to, your personality is fixed. You are who you are when you get here. Like your brain works in a certain way. So that's a constant. But attitude is a variable. Attitude is the only thing we have control over. And my father would say life is 10% what happens and 90% how we choose to react to it, right? And having that attitude of resilience is hard to grasp when you're in that fear-driven what-if moment, right? But understanding that we have control over that we can sit and worry about climbing the mountain, or we can, put on the crampons, whip out the ice axes and start doing it, knowing that you're best prepared as you possibly can. You're doing the best you can. I had a conversation with someone who was an interview maybe a year ago, and coming out of it, my wife said, "How'd you do?" I said, "I did the absolute best that I could. I think I did great, but I know I did the best that I could." And having that attitude be positive instead of negative, or, what's next? What can I do to move forward versus I can't move forward, to me is a big part of resilience. I mean, we can think this, do this, prepare for this, run on a treadmill, but if we don't gain ownership of our attitude and how we choose to look at things, then that's the single biggest impediment to resilience.
Well, I think there's also a tendency to overthink and underdo, and you can think yourself into something, think yourself out of something, and pretty soon you got 100 good reasons and 100 bad reasons, and you're sitting there in the middle. They say, give me a yes or no, don't put me into purgatory, a maybe. And I think once you get to the point where you're comfortable, you've done all the preparation you can, right? How many times you study for a test and at a certain point you put the book down because I'm just killing time now.
What the hell else am I going to learn?
That's right. I don't got it by now. But here's the thing, is because you're not working or living in a vacuum, you're dealing with other people and situations, right? So if you go to a boardroom and there's major decisions going to be made that day, and hopefully good decisions for you, you're already identifying who's going to be around that table. Where do you stand with those people? Are they fans of yours or are they challengers? And the best thing you can do, just like on Wheel of Fortune, is buy some vowels before you solve the puzzle. Once you can start reading the room, once you can start asking some questions, do you get the lay of the land and say, okay, now here's what I'm in for, right? Versus, that saying, if you believe it is, it is, and if you believe it isn't, it isn't. What you believe tends to manifest itself because you're accepting things that you're aligned with and agree with, even if it's a negative to you. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they're telling me exactly what I thought. And I think that's where you got to free yourself to be in the moment with what you're dealing with and who you are. And the past is not going to serve you and the future isn't here. So, and I think the other thing, and Julian made that point earlier, gratitude. What if you won 9 years in a row and the 10th year you came in second? Would you say, boy, I lost? Or it's like, hey, after 9 years, it's good someone else got the prize. or it shows maybe I was a little bit lazy this year and I took it for granted. But you got to put it in context to say, if you look back at your life and say, I've got so much that I've been blessed with. So many wonderful things. All of a sudden, something's going to change my mind and my future and my vision because of that thing, instead of like all my years of working and challenging. And, I think people just want to know you're a good person trying to do good things for other people. And if that's the baseline, you're successful every day with a smile to somebody, a joke to somebody, whatever. Leave the log pile bigger and you found it. With that, let me swing over to some of these comments. Carl says, tough times for entrepreneurs is part of the deal. As Dave said, we have to be tough all the time. Well, you got to be ready to be tough. And, sometimes you surprise people by being softer than they expect, right? Some people come in and they think, oh, you're going to go nuts on them. And, you know, sometimes doing what does something for them, especially if you look at long term, is how forgiving you are of others, is how forgiven you will be when you apply the same thing. So, you know, that saying, the people you meet on the way up are the same people you're seeing on the way down. Beverly comes back with always Julian, and does athletes say to himself, I'm going to lose? I don't think so. Here's Omar coming in through Facebook. YouTube. Happy Friday. Good morning, Don, guys. Always great guests and advice on the show. God bless. Same thing to you, Omar. Omar has his Zoom party show, and I was on it. Actually, won. He donated money to charity for everybody who played, and he does this for young kids. And he's got a full-time job during the day. So great to see you, Omar. Beverly says, "What a great attitude, Don. It's hard to let go. You have to fail forward." Whatever forward is. And failure is only feedback. You know, it's what you do with it and what you learn from it. And sometimes you're better off failing because it does make you a little bit more humble. And there is something to humility. You know, you want to be like everybody else. You don't want to be over everybody else or ahead. So, Julian, your turn.
I just want to pick up on what Mike was saying about sort of attitude, really. And I think what we must remember is that as humans, we are negatively biased. We have this inbuilt negativity, which is driven out of our survival, sort of prehistoric time to survive. Unfortunately, that does get us sometimes. And I know sometimes when we wake up, if you wake up in the day, and about intentions as well is quite important. You can change this by intentions. And if you wake up in the day, stub your toe on something and say, I'm going to have a bad day today, pretty much you probably have a bad day, because you've set your intentions, you've created a narrative, and off you go. And I think it sounds really simple, and we probably know that, but we get caught up with that, and we have to be really clear. That's why things like gratitude grounds us and puts us back to that positivity again. It's almost like saying, okay, I'm going to have a good day today. And then it's all about just positive thinking, because I don't believe it's all about just positive thinking, but it's just setting your internal barometer to be more positive and to see things in a more positive way, you know, seeing challenges as opportunities, the difficulties, things to overcome, you know, failure as feedback. And do you know what? If you start to set yourself those right intentions that you're going to have that as a day, you have this wonderful thing in your system called confirmation bias, and it will look for evidence for that. And if you set it in the right way, it'll look for evidence, and suddenly you will have a better day than you did by telling yourself you were going to have a rubbish day. And I think that's important. And just picking on another point you said, Don, about community. And I think, you know, we're not supposed to do things on our own. We're not supposed to be lone wolves. We're not supposed to survive and battle through on our own. And I think community is, as part of resilience, is absolutely vital. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we all need social support. We need friendships. We need people to support us. We need people to, you know, carry us, encourage us, and just be there. You know, I've often gone to networking events just purely just to be with my buddies, and I just need some people, need some social time. And I think that's really important as well. But also with the social sort of community side, you have diverse thinking as well. And I think, you know, I think we talked earlier about, you know, getting caught up with our own thinking, trying to navigate stuff. Actually, having other people to think about the problems or the challenges you've got may help you offer better solutions. And so having people around you gives you that diverse thinking, different perspectives, and just general sense of belonging. And I think we're social creatures. And I think, to me, you know, in terms of building that resilience, you've got to build a network around you. It doesn't mean thousands of people. In fact, it's got to be quite a core people you can depend on. But the other flip side to that is how you can support other people as well, because there's something in you giving back, for you helping other people helps you as well. It's one of those weird dynamics that goes on. And I think that, to me, is quite important as well.
That's perfect. So, Mike?
Yeah, I'm right on board with you. In fact, I had a client last year, and his line is take the attitude of gratitude, right? That's another thing that we decide to do. And that sort of circular back and forth, that two-way street that it creates, well, that's gratitude as well, right? Like seeing the happiness in someone else and giving them that gratitude, seeing the effect, and then it coming back at you has a profound effect on us, right? And attitude has a huge impact on our audience or who we're talking to as well. I'll give you an example. I decided to sort of test my attitude theory in the halls of my time at Hasbro, and there was a long hallway that not many people were on, so it was infrequent that you were passing people. And every time you do in an office environment, if you're not particularly close with the person, you just sort of give the tight, like, hi, how are you? Hi, like the tight smile, right? That is pretty much what everybody in the business world did. So one day I'm walking down the hall and this woman, Susan, was walking towards me. I decided to test it, and predictably came the, hi, Mike, hi. And I came back with, hi, how are you? I came back with, I couldn't be better if there were two of me. I'm having the best day. Couldn't feel better. How are you doing? And she physically, like, her eyes expanded, her mouth was just sort of, and she physically leaned away from me. I wasn't right up on her, but she was just like, didn't expect it, right? And she walked away like with her head high, and she responded to me with, that's so good to hear, wow. And it put her walking away like a little spring in her step. A few days later, I saw Susan again, same hallway, and this time I shifted gears. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Rough day, Susan. I hope yours is better. And I just kept walking. And I glanced over my shoulder, and Susan is walking like with her head down, like had almost a mope to her, right? And it reminded me of the power of attitude, whether it's internally directed or externally directed. We have control over that in situations where we don't know if good or bad is going to happen. We know how we can react to it. It has a profound effect on the people around us, and not just, but like that is part of building that community in my mind. Is in the work that I do, everything communicates, right? If you get on stage to present a new concept to the C-suite of whatever organization or corporation, I mean, you're getting up there and you need to communicate what it is, but you come up and say, I'm really excited about this new direction for XYZ. Let's get into the presentation. Well, what the hell do you think the audience is thinking? They're thinking, you don't look excited. You don't sound excited. Why the hell would we be excited? And you lose them. They shut off. An audience is on or off. If you come out and communicate with the right attitude attached to the communication, it's a totally different story. I cannot wait to show you guys this new concept for XYZ. The insight that led to it is amazing. And let's just get into it. You'll see what I'm talking about. Now the audience is feeling a completely different vibe, and they respond back to me in the same accord. I mean, any audience is there for you. The question is connecting with them, right? So I had to present, this is my last reference, and then I'll stop. But I had to present for the first time to the C-suite and the amphitheater of general managers and VPs for Transformers. That was the brand I was on, but that didn't matter. It was my first time presenting at one of these quarterly reviews, and I was terrified, right? The what ifs were creeping in really hard on the fear side, Julian. First thing I did when I got up there and it was my turn, show of hands, how many people are terrified of presenting to this front of the circle? And it was the C-suite. Every single hand, including the CEOs and the whole C-suite, went up like this. Everybody just sort of started laughing like, yep, been there, done that, know what it's like. Good. Then you'll understand if I'm a little nervous or, miss a beat. But good to see I have the support. My brain went from it's me versus them to it's us. That idea of even a community in the moment, right? That creates that trust, that support. I saw the audience saying, keep going, we've been there, you're going to do great. And all of that leads into, that idea of everything communicates, connecting to what's around us and connecting to what's inside of us, and being able to control what we can and discard what we can't is inherent in my whole career. I had to learn that, and many times the hard way.
Well, I think you touch on so many quality points. I do believe people hear your music way before they care about hearing your words. So, it's the packaging, the presentation, the timing, the humility. People like authenticity. People like to know you're no different or better than them. And they're also accepted. And the other points is you depend on people to validate you, to make you feel relevant, right? If you go up to somebody in the hall and say, boy, you bring so much value every day here, or you're such a bright spirit, that person walks away with a reinforced attitude that I belong, I have value. I can't tell you how many people I have conversations with who watch this show and shows like it and tell me what they got out of it that I would have never seen if they never commented, or if they commented and didn't say it. So, what we're doing is exponentially amplifying our reach, right? So it's how many people can you touch in the shortest, most time and cost efficient manner for everybody, and do it on a regular basis. Consistency is key. The nice thing about here, it's like a buffet. You come every day, eat what you want, come back tomorrow, eat some more, versus, hey, it's one and done. I won't be back for 6 months. Grab all you can, and I'm here to stuff all you can. And what I learned earlier about LinkedIn, and it applies to this, is the only three things you can bring is either inspiration, education, or entertainment, or a combination of all three. And if you can entertain people, educate people, and inspire them, you're going to have a competitive advantage. So it's the speakers that need to earn the trust of the audience, where most audiences, they're paying a hefty price traveling, and they got to get their benefit. So I think it's key that everybody earns their own spot, and everything is reciprocal, right? Don't comment on a while, you won't get tagged, right? And what you give is what you get. The difference is who's big enough, who's got the vision to say, hey, I can go without getting something for 3 months. These people, it makes a big difference, right? If it's that important and it doesn't cost me anything, I'll go second. Or, trusting somebody with a little fast is better than trusting somebody with a lot later, right? I'd rather give somebody $5 and never see them again than get to know them, give them $5,000 and have to figure out why I didn't figure this out earlier. And that's part of the life lessons. But I think learning from others is the best way to learn lessons. I think so many people don't invest in themselves with a coach, with somebody who can at least be another set of fresh eyes, doesn't have a vested interest, and really be a friend. I knew in business, people did business with people they liked first. And then it was, what's the deal? Just to save 2 points and have somebody that never shows up, doesn't follow up, doesn't do that. And, you got to realize there's another tomorrow for everybody. So not everybody's supposed to fit exactly right at the beginning. And what are you doing to get them over the hump? I'm into whatever it takes to get it done. If I got to do 80%, and you do 20 and we finish, hey, we're on to the next thing. Julian, we got about 7 minutes left. Time flies around here.
It does indeed. It's great. And I think this show, just building that point of having that impact on other people around you, is also making sure you choose the right people around you as well. And I think that's, and I think we're sometimes in danger of being nice to people who are perhaps, not say always toxic, but are just quite negative. And I think we need to be a bit more ruthless with those people, in terms, not with them, as in with our relationship with them, and boundaries. Because I think, as Mike gave that example of being positive and negative, and the vibrations and the impact that had, those people around us will do exactly the same to us as well. So, it's making sure you have those people that are not only for you, but also will challenge you as well. So it's not just about for you, but challenge you, but also give you that right sense of energy and keep you going and inspire you along the way. And I think this show demonstrates that with all the different people you have connecting and sort of getting the vibe out there. And just one thing, just on just about being in the moment. I think Don, you talked about it earlier on. We can't do anything about the past, and I think often we get caught with that. I should have done that. I should have done that. It's like, it just gets depressed, doesn't it? You just get depressed because you can't do anything about it. And I don't think we shouldn't not plan, but actually if you get caught up with the future too much, then we get riddled with anxiety. Our best place, just like I've been for the last hour or so, is just to be in the moment right now, enjoy what you have, and you're at most peace. Your system, your body loves being in the moment because it's the most in control. It's the most enjoyable. You see more, you observe more. I've picked up on things that I would never have done if I kept thinking about the future. And I think, we've got to spend more time in the moment, be more mindful, be more just looking around and enjoying the journey. It sounds very cliche, but it's so true. Having been a person who was driven by goals most of my life, and just about achieving things, I've gone to a place now of just enjoying now. And what can I do? I do that with my kids. I enjoy those moments, whether that's having a McDonald's with them, having a walk with them, going in the sea, whatever it is, just grabbing the moments. And that's what it's about. And I think you feel better, you enjoy life better, and you get those experiences that you can then build upon for your own life.
Well, as you grow and learn through your life, you evolve, hopefully. And you find out that what was important when you were 18 isn't important when you're 38 or 50, right? And the last thing you want is a big muscle car that makes a lot of noise and can't go to Costco and pick up groceries or whatever. And you need to be proud of yourself. You're the judge and jury, like Julian just mentioned. There's a lot of things people are embarrassed about, things they did in the past, or disappointed in themselves, and they have good reason to be. Right? But how long do you sentence yourself? When do you say, I forgive myself? And I think that's a big element is, saying, you did enough, you worried enough, put it behind you. They say, throw away your rear view mirror. Don't look back unless you're going back. And it's really the future. It's the excitement. And I think to Julian's point, my grandkids, I'm always over there. Actually, my daughter lives in the same house she was born in. She never wanted to leave it, so she bought it from me. And, I go there 2-3 days a week. And one thing I'll say, it's really hard for me to believe, my 11-year-old grandson, when he comes home from school, this is the first show he puts on. And I didn't even know about it, but and I said, Leo, if I was 11 years old watching this show with these people, with this knowledge, where you're going to be in 4 or 5 years. You're getting a better self-education than they're giving you in the public schools, right? So I think that's the joy, is being able to live vicariously through others. Having other people's success make you feel even better. I mean, if you shared an ice cream cone with someone who never had one, and you've had thousands of them, wouldn't that be worthwhile, like Mike alluded to see their facial expression, to see their joy? And what did it take? A couple bucks? How often are you going to do it? Once in a lifetime if you're lucky? People have to really get balanced with priorities. I see so many people take all their time worrying about money, and they run out of time before they run out of the money, and why didn't they enjoy that? So, Mike, coming up on top of the hour, what's your final thoughts? I'll go to Linda. Linda's a great lady. She comes here every day almost. Grandmother, great-grandmother. Attitude of gratitude, guys, exactly, can make a difference in someone needing your help if we show and share. And someone never had that much care or thoughtfulness shown. And that's so right. What you take for granted, someone's, whatever treasure is somebody else's whatever. So true. And think of what turns you on, what gets you excited. Well, people like you get the same feelings when they get that, right? How many people compliment you when there is a sincere compliment deserved, right? If you ever see someone's outfit and you say, wow, that is outstanding. Do you go up to that person and say, wow, that's outstanding? You just said it to yourself about them. Why can't you say it to them with them?
Put it out there.
And now they feel proud that they picked that or they bought that. Mike.
Julian, check out this sales technique. Don, you don't look old enough to be a grandfather.
Yeah. I can't believe you're not sisters, huh?
I think it boils down to perspective, whether it's internal, personal, business, what have you, right? It boils down to perspective, and our perspective is always warped by what we think we see or what we know is going on, and other people don't, right? And I liken it to a snow globe. So, around winter time, you see a snow globe, and it's this beautiful, you pick it up, shake it, this beautiful winter scene, crystal clear of maybe, a house or a town or whatever. Now imagine you're in the snow globe and not looking from the outside. the first thing you'll notice is the glass is warped and you don't have a clear look. But more importantly, there's constant earthquakes and it's snowing all the time. And that's our perspective when we're only thinking from what we see and how we think. And an example of that, and going to sort of what you were talking about, Julian, it's the difference of somebody, say a business owner or anybody else, but a business owner saying it's all on me versus a business owner saying, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm going to find the right people to help. Right? Like that's a shift in attitude. It's a shift in perspective that's imperative for all of us, like letting go of things that happen, not worrying about what's coming. It's a way to naturally shed the what ifs and live for, the present, because that's when the reality actually occurs and you're able to be much more, it's a more pure perspective and real perspective that you want to accomplish. I think that's critical in coming back from anything. Getting back to resilience is perspective.
Well, so great to end it on resilience. Your final words, Julian, and final thoughts on resilience now than you had an hour ago.
Well, I mean, I would just say, just think of resilience as a muscle. You can exercise it, you can increase it. It's something you can add to yourself. Some people are not born with more resilience than others. You can actually build it, develop it. And so if you have that mindset, then you can actually become more resilient as an individual.
Well, that gives everybody hope and promise now. So with that, I want to thank everybody, Mike, Julian, audience. You're all fantastic. And won't be here next 2 days, taking weekends off for a while, but come back Monday. Monday we'll have Harvey and Kelly, who are just unbelievable. Harvey has the franchise show, which is number 1, number 2, and number 3 this week on the franchise events. And only in 7 weeks has he accomplished that. And then Kelly has the awesome journey with Christy Howard. That's actually, she is a 1:1 p.m. on Tuesday. Harvey is right after me on Tuesday. And now Carl's going to be right before me. So there'll be 4 straight shows on Tuesday. You can watch forever. So again,
get your popcorn ready, everybody.
Yeah, and it's only going to get bigger and better because everything is getting bigger and better together, and that makes it a lot better. So with that, thank you. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Come back in about 72 hours, and we'll do it again.